Hey, Shabbat Shalom, my friends. How do we know that the values that we hold so dear will somehow perpetuate themselves and be carried on and practiced and believed by our own children? I ask this question because in this week's parsha, Parshat Emor, God commands the priests, the Kohanim, and he says to Moshe, Emor el ha-Kohanim ve'amarta alehem. Tell the Kohanim, Bnei Aaron, the sons of Aaron, ve'amarta alehem, and say to them. So Rashi picks up on this double language. Tell Aaron and say to them. Tell, say. And Rashi explains, because it's to teach the elders, the elder Kohanim, to teach the younger Kohanim what it means to be a Kohen. But if you look at the next 16 verses in the Parsha, there's nothing about the philosophy or the attitude of the Torah as to what a Kohen actually is. All it does is give all of the details of who a Kohen can marry, who a Kohen can't marry, who a Kohen can come into contact with, who a Kohen can't come into contact with. It's all behavioral, it's all practical actions. There's no philosophy, there's no ideology. And in general, the Torah does not have a lot of philosophy. The Torah is really a guidebook of laws, of rules, of regulations. Here's what to do, here's what not to do. What about all the philosophy? And I think the answer to this question is because if we want to make sure that our children and the next generation believes in what we believe, and they actually carry on the lifestyle that we hold dear, it can't be about philosophy and ideology. I'm a big rabbi when it comes to philosophy. I love to talk about ideas. But I do know that when my kids were little, the one thing they paid attention to was what I did. And they often ignored what I said. And they know that because talk is cheap. And it's all about walking the walk. What kind of lifestyle are we living? If the older Kohanim wanted to make sure that their younger children, that their sons were going to be Kohanim like them, then they needed to instruct them in the behaviors, in the practices of the kahuna. And that doesn't mean we're robots, because we have to study philosophy, we have to study ideology and what is our attitude towards anything in life. That's what the Torah is about. But if you want to perpetuate Judaism, it's about introducing yourself, your family, and your community to a lifestyle. People pick up on a lifestyle. And what's interesting is that the mitzvos, therefore, are not simply rituals to sort of check off a box. Mitzvot are there to express ideas. Right? We can talk about how the Greeks tried to oppress the Jewish people, right? And we fought back. But if you want your kids to be talking about that to their kids, then you gotta light a menorah. We could speak about our belief in God and how He created the world in 6 days and rest on the seventh. But if you light Shabbat candles and you make Kiddush and you sit around a table, that's gonna perpetuate our Judaism. And the Jewish community has been successful in keeping Judaism alive for as long as we have, despite all of our enemies. And this is such an important message today. How do we make sure that despite what our enemies are trying to do to us, that not only will Jews live on, but Judaism will survive, our way of life. And that's by bringing people into a lifestyle, into practices. I'll leave you with a story. One of my donors called me up and said, I'm sending my annual donation in with a check. My son is coming to your office in the next hour. I said, that's so nice, that's so beautiful and generous. But you can just put the check in the mail, you don't have to send it with your son. And he said to me, no, Rabbi, I want to make sure that my son gives charity one day too. And so I want him to do some sort of action, some sort of behavior to give over the beautiful ideas that Judaism has. And this is something, of course, to remember and to be proud of, as our enemies are teaching their children, whatever it is their children are learning, to hate, right? To be filled with venom for another people. We are teaching our children to give, and we are teaching our children to observe Shabbat and to do things that illuminate the world. And how are we doing it? Through actions, through practices. Talk is cheap, and everybody knows it. Actions are where it's at. Shabbat Shalom.